The fluorescent lights hummed softly above the pediatric wing corridor. Thomas Hart stood motionless, his daughter's medical folder pressed against his chest like a shield. Around him, the hospital breathed its eternal rhythm, soft beeps, distant voices, the whisper of nurses' shoes against polished floors. Sophie? Mia? Emma? His voice carried that particular edge every parent knows. Not quite panic, not quite frustration. Something in between. Something that tasted like fear wrapped in exhaustion. They'd been right beside him 30 seconds ago. Right there. 3 identical 7-year-old girls in matching yellow raincoats, holding hands like a paper chain. He looked down at his phone, just for a moment, to check the room number for Sophie's follow-up appointment. Now they were gone. Thomas turned in a slow circle, his heart beginning that familiar climb into his throat. The pediatric wing at Mercy General was a maze of identical doors, pale green walls, and corridors that seemed to fold into themselves. His daughters had the collective attention span of a butterfly in a garden. They could disappear in a heartbeat. Girls, this isn't... He stopped himself. Took a breath. This isn't the time for games. Then he heard it. Giggling. Not the loud, chaotic kind that usually preceded trouble. Something softer. More tender. The kind of sound children make when they've discovered something precious and fragile. He followed it down the corridor, past the nurse's station where a young woman glanced up and smiled sympathetically. Past a cart loaded with lunch trays. Around a corner where the lights seemed to soften, as if the hospital itself was holding its breath. Room 247. The door was half open. The giggling came from inside, punctuated now by a woman's voice. Soft. Surprised. Almost wondering. Thomas pushed the door open slowly, ready to apologize, ready to collect his daughters and leave this stranger's private world. But he stopped. The room was small, painted that particular shade of hospital beige that tried to be comforting but only managed to be lonely. A single window looked out onto the parking lot, gray January light filtering through half-drawn blinds. Medical equipment lined the walls, monitors, for stands, the quiet architecture of illness. And in the bed, propped up against pillows, was a woman. Young. Maybe 32, maybe 35. It was hard to tell. Illness has a way of blurring age, stealing it quietly while you're not looking. Her hair was blonde, long, falling in soft waves across her shoulders. Her face was pale, almost translucent, like parchment held up to light. But her eyes were startling. Gray. The color of winter sky just before snow. Those eyes were looking at his daughters. Sophie stood at the foot of the bed, her small hands gripping the metal frame. Mia had climbed halfway onto the mattress, her yellow raincoat bunched around her waist. And Emma, brave, impulsive Emma, had taken the woman's hand in both of hers and was holding it like something precious. "Daddy," Sophie whispered, not taking her eyes off the woman. "She's all alone." Thomas's mouth opened. Nothing came out. He should grab his daughters, apologize, leave. This was private. Sacred. A stranger's final chapter, and they just walked in uninvited. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way the woman was looking at his daughters. Not with annoyance. Not with confusion. But with something else entirely. Something that looked dangerously, impossibly like hope. "I'm so sorry," Thomas finally managed, taking a step into the room. His voice came out rough, uncertain. "My daughters, they have a gift for finding trouble. We were looking for room 274 and they just... It's okay." The woman's voice was soft. Tired. But not unkind. Like wind through autumn leaves. "They're beautiful." Mia, ever the bold one, settled herself more firmly on the bed, tucking her legs under her like she'd known this woman her entire life. "What's your name?" "Mia, get down right now," Thomas said, mortification flooding through him. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Girls, we need to go." "Anna," the woman said, ignoring him completely. Her gaze was fixed on Mia. "My name is Anna." "I'm Mia." "That's Sophie." "That's Emma." Mia pointed to each of her sisters in turn, her small hand moving through the air like a conductor. We're triplets. That means we all have the same birthday, but we're different people. Anna's lips curved into the faintest smile. I can see that. You're all very different. Why are you here all by yourself? Emma asked, her voice carrying that blunt honesty only children possess. Don't you have a family? Thomas felt his stomach drop. Emma, you can't just ask people. It's okay, Anna said again, but this time her voice cracked slightly. She cleared her throat, looked away toward the window where gray light painted everything in watercolor sadness. No. I don't have family. Sophie, still holding the bed frame, squeezed tighter. That's really sad. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was something else. Something heavier. Thomas stood frozen in the doorway, watching this moment unfold like a scene from someone else's life. Anna looked back at the triplets, and something in her expression shifted. The resignation flickered. Underneath it, something raw emerged. It is sad, she whispered. But that's just how it is sometimes. No, it's not, Mia said with the stubborn certainty of a 7-year-old who hadn't yet learned the world didn't bend to kindness. You have us now. Thomas's breath caught. He should really, truly leave. Walk out. Take his daughters. Apologize on the way out. Go to Sophie's appointment. Live his life. But his feet wouldn't move. And his daughters, his beautiful, empathetic, troublemaking daughters, had already decided this woman wasn't a stranger anymore. The door opened behind him. A nurse walked in, her expression shifting from professional to confused when she saw Thomas and the girls. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize Anna had visitors. They're just leaving, Anna said quickly. Too quickly. Like she was trying to protect them from the awkwardness. Actually, Thomas heard himself say, and he still couldn't quite believe the words coming out of his mouth. We were hoping to stay a bit longer. If that's okay with Anna. 3 pairs of identical brown eyes turned to look at him with expressions of pure joy. The nurse looked surprised. And Anna? Anna looked like someone had just handed her something she'd forgotten existed. Permission. Permission to not be alone. Yes, Anna stammered, her hand tightening slightly around Emma's fingers. If you want. But don't you have somewhere to be? Thomas glanced at his watch. Sophie's appointment was in 20 minutes. He could reschedule. The pediatrician would understand. Nothing more important than this, he said softly. The nurse nodded slowly, a knowing look crossing her face. I'll come back in a bit to check vitals, she said, then left, closing the door quietly behind her. Silence settled over the room. Not uncomfortable silence, but the weighted kind. The kind that happens when strangers collide by accident, or perhaps by something else entirely. So, Thomas said, pulling a chair closer to the bed and sitting down. I'm Thomas. And I apologize in advance for anything my daughters say in the next 10 minutes. They have zero filter. Anna laughed. Actually laughed, a real sound that seemed to surprise even her. I like that about them. What's wrong with you? Sophie asked, moving from the foot of the bed to perch on the edge near Anna's knees. Why do you have all these tubes? Sophie. Thomas's face flushed hot. You can't just. But Anna just smiled, something sad creeping back into her eyes. I'm sick. Very sick. My heart isn't working the way it should. Can the doctors fix it? Emma asked. Anna hesitated. They're trying. But sometimes bodies just don't want to cooperate. You should try harder, Mia said seriously. Tell your body to behave. Thomas wanted to explain that's not how terminal illness worked. That wanting wasn't enough. That sometimes the world was cruel and unfair and 7-year-olds didn't understand that yet. But looking at Anna's face, the way something shifted there, something small but real, he kept his mouth shut. Maybe you're right, Anna whispered. Maybe I haven't been wanting it hard enough. For the next hour, Thomas sat in that hospital room and watched his daughters work their particular brand of magic. They told Anna about their school. About their cat named Mr. Whiskers who knocked things off counters for sport. About their father's terrible attempts at making pancakes. "They're always lumpy," Sophie said with dramatic disappointment. Mia showed her a drawing she'd made that morning, a rainbow unicorn fighting a dragon, rendered in crayon with tremendous enthusiasm and zero regard for anatomical accuracy. Anna sang a song she'd learned in music class. Slightly off-key but with such tremendous heart that Anna's eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. Sophie just held Anna's hand and asked her questions. What was her favorite color? Did she like ice cream? Did she believe in magic? And Anna came alive. The resignation faded from her eyes, replaced by genuine laughter, real smiles, moments where she forgot she was dying and just existed in the present with 3 chaotic 7-year-olds who decided she was worth their time. Thomas found himself studying her. Really looking. She was beautiful, yes. But more than that, there was something about the way she engaged with his daughters. The gentleness in her responses. The way she lit up when Mia climbed into her lap to show her the unicorn drawing more closely. She would have made a wonderful mother. The thought hit him like a punch to the chest. Would have. Past tense. Because Anna wasn't going to get that chance. His wife, Jennifer, had died 3 years ago. Ovarian cancer. Fast and brutal and entirely unfair. He'd been left with 3 5-year-old girls who didn't understand why mommy wasn't coming home. He'd spent the last 36 months trying to be both parents. Drowning in grief he couldn't show them. He understood loss. He understood the hollow ache of a future stolen. But looking at Anna, this stranger who was somehow not a stranger anymore, he understood something else too. He understood what it meant to face the end completely alone. "Mr. Hart?" The nurse poked her head back in, apologetic. "I hate to interrupt, but I need to run Anna's vitals and administer her medication." Thomas glanced at his watch. They'd been there for over an hour. Sophie's appointment was long past. "Of course. Girls, we need to let Anna rest." The protests were immediate and vocal. "But we just got here. We're not done talking. Can't we stay a little longer?" "You can come back," Anna said quickly, then seemed to catch herself. Uncertainty flickered across her face. "I mean, if you want. You don't have to. I'm sure you're busy, Anne." "We want to," Thomas interrupted. He met her eyes, saw the vulnerability there. The fear of hoping for something and being disappointed. "We'll come back tomorrow. If that's okay." Anna's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back quickly, nodding. "Yes. That would be yes." Emma hugged her first, wrapping small arms around Anna's neck. Then Sophie. Then Mia, who whispered something in Anna's ear that made her smile through her tears. Thomas didn't ask what his daughter said. Some things were meant to stay between a dying woman and a 7-year-old who still believed in magic. As they left the room, Thomas glanced back. Anna was watching them go, one hand pressed to her chest, her expression a mix of wonder and something that looked dangerously close to hope. That night, after tucking the girls into bed, Thomas sat in his kitchen and stared at his phone. He Googled Anna's condition. Dilated cardiomyopathy. Advanced stage. The prognosis was grim. Weeks, maybe months if she was lucky. And she was alone. No family listed. No emergency contacts beyond her doctor. How did someone reach 30-something years old with no one? What kind of life had Anna lived that she'd ended up dying in a hospital room with no visitors, until 3 nosy triplets had burst in by accident? He should let it go. He had enough on his plate. 3 daughters to raise. A demanding job as a graphic designer working from home. A house that was always one disaster away from chaos. Getting involved with a dying stranger wasn't smart. It wasn't practical. It would only end in more grief, more loss, more explaining to his daughters why someone else they cared about wasn't coming back. But he kept seeing Anna's face when Mia had climbed into her lap. Kept hearing the way she'd laughed at Sophie's terrible jokes. Kept remembering how his daughters had refused to leave, because they'd seen something in Anna that everyone else had apparently missed. Someone worth staying for. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. How did Sophie's appointment go? Thomas winced. He'd completely forgotten to reschedule. Had to reschedule. Something came up. Her response was immediate. Everything okay? He hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then he typed. The girls found someone who needed them today. I'll explain later. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. That sounds like my granddaughters. Call me tomorrow. Thomas set down his phone and looked around his kitchen. Dishes in the sink. Drawings scattered across the table. 3 small raincoats hanging on hooks by the door. This was his life. Small. Messy. Full of love and chaos in equal measure. And tomorrow, they were going back to room 247. The next day, Thomas showed up at Mercy General with 3 girls, a thermos of soup his mother had made, and a coloring book. The nurse at the station smiled when she saw them. Anna's been asking about you all morning, she said quietly. I think you made quite an impression. Anna was sitting up when they entered. Thomas could see immediately that she'd made an effort. Her hair was brushed, falling in soft waves over her shoulders. She wore a different gown, still hospital-issued, but somehow she'd made it look less clinical. She'd put on lip gloss. And her eyes, those winter sky eyes, lit up the moment she saw them. You came back, she breathed. We said we would, Mia said matter-of-factly, already climbing onto the bed. We brought you soup. And coloring pages, Sophie added, holding up the book proudly. Daddy said you might be bored. I thought maybe we could all color together, Thomas said, pulling chairs close to the bed. If you're feeling up to it. For the next 2 hours, they colored. Anna's hand shook slightly as she held the crayons, but she worked with careful concentration on a butterfly that Sophie had chosen for her. The girls chatted nonstop, about Mr. Whiskers' newest adventure involving getting stuck in the dryer, about how Emma had lost another tooth, about the spelling test Mia had aced. Thomas found himself just watching. The way Anna asked questions and really listened to the answers. The way she laughed at the right moments. The way his daughters had utterly, completely adopted her into their world without hesitation. The way something painful in his chest was starting to ease just slightly in Anna's presence. Can I ask you something? Anna said quietly during a moment when the girls were debating whether butterflies should be purple or pink. She was looking at Thomas, her expression careful. Of course. Why are you doing this? Her voice was soft. Uncertain. You don't know me. You don't know me anything. And I'm... She paused, swallowed hard. I'm not going to get better. I know what this is. I know how it ends. So why waste your time? Thomas set down his crayon. Chose his words carefully. My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. He met her eyes. And at the end she had me. She had her parents. She had friends. But what killed her almost as much as the disease was feeling like she was a burden. Like she was stealing time from people who had better things to do. Anna's eyes glistened. You're not a waste of time, Anna. Thomas continued softly. And my daughters, they don't see a dying woman. They just see someone who needed friends. Someone worth showing up for. He smiled. And honestly, they're better judges of character than most adults I know. A tear slipped down Anna's cheek. She wiped it away quickly. I've never had friends, she whispered. Not real ones. I grew up in foster care. 12 different homes. By the time I aged out at 18, I'd learned that people leave. Everyone leaves. So I just stopped trying to make connections. Stopped hoping someone would stay. She looked down at the butterfly she was coloring, her hand trembling. And now I'm 34 and dying alone. And I can't even be mad about it because it's exactly what I expected. Daddy, why is Anna crying? Emma looked up, concerned. Thomas glanced at his daughter, then back at Anna. Sometimes people cry when they're happy, sweetheart. Are you happy, Anna? Mia asked directly. Anna laughed through her tears. Yes. I think maybe I am. They visited every day that week. Thomas rearranged his work schedule, took on projects he could finish from his laptop in Anna's room. The girls brought homework, crafts, stories. They introduced Anna to Mr. Whiskers via video chat, which resulted in the cat knocking Thomas's phone off the counter and a 10-minute search under the refrigerator. Anna started sitting up more. Started eating a little more. Started laughing more. The nurses noticed. Her doctor noticed. Thomas noticed. Something in Anna was fighting again. And he suspected it had everything to do with 3 7-year-old girls who refused to let her give up. 2 weeks after that first accidental meeting, Anna's doctor, a kind woman named Dr. Patel, pulled Thomas aside in the hallway. "I don't know what you're doing," Dr. Patel said, her expression thoughtful. "But keep doing it. Her numbers are improving. Not miraculously. Not cure level. But improving." She paused. Her will to fight is back. And in cases like this, that matters more than people realize. "She's just not alone anymore," Thomas said simply. Dr. Patel nodded slowly. "Anna told me about her situation. No family. No support system. We've been trying to find placement for her when she's discharged, but—" She hesitated. "The reality is she'll need significant help. Round-the-clock care, at least initially. And she has no one." Thomas knew what she was asking before she asked it. "How long until discharge? If this improvement continues?" "Maybe a week." "But Thomas," she met his eyes, "that's a huge ask. You have your own family to think about." He did. He absolutely did. 3 daughters who needed him. A career that was already stretched thin. A life that was barely holding together on good days. Taking in a woman who was still very much dying, who would need constant care, who might have weeks or months but certainly not years, it was insane. Reckless. Completely impractical. "Let me talk to my daughters," he said. That evening, after dinner, Thomas sat the triplets down in the living room. "Girls, we need to have a serious conversation about Anna." 3 sets of identical eyes looked at him with sudden wariness. "Is she okay?" Sophie asked quietly. "She's doing better, actually. A lot better. But when she leaves the hospital, she's going to need help. A lot of help. And she doesn't have anyone to take care of her." "We can take care of her," Mia said immediately. "Sweetheart, it's not that simple. Anna is still very sick. She would need to live with someone who could help her with everything. Medicine. Food. Doctor appointments. It's a big responsibility." Emma tilted her head, studying him with that unnerving perception she had. "You want her to live with us?" It wasn't a question. Thomas sighed. "I'm thinking about it. But that would mean big changes for all of us. It would mean sharing our space, our time. It would mean watching someone we care about possibly get sicker." He paused, his throat tight. "And it might mean losing her eventually. Like we lost Mommy." The room went quiet. Jennifer's absence was still a presence in their house. A ghost that lived in the photos on the walls, the empty chair at the table, the bedtime stories Thomas still didn't tell quite right. "Mommy would want us to help her," Sophie said finally, her voice small but certain. "Mommy always said we should help people who need help," Emma added. "And Anna needs help," Mia finished. "So we should help her. It's not complicated, Daddy." Thomas felt something crack open in his chest. Something that had been closed tight for 3 years. His daughters, barely 7 years old, understood something most adults spent lifetimes learning. Love wasn't convenient. Kindness wasn't practical. But they were always worth it. "Okay," he said softly. "Okay. Let's bring Anna home." The logistics were complicated. Thomas had to hire a home health aide, rearrange the downstairs guest room, install medical equipment. Anna's insurance covered some of it, but he quietly covered the rest, ignoring the voice in his head that said he couldn't afford this, shouldn't afford this, was making a terrible financial decision. When he told Anna the plan, she cried. Actually broke down sobbing. And Thomas held her hand while she shook with the weight of being chosen, being valued, being deemed worth the effort. "I don't understand why you're doing this," she whispered. "I'm a stranger. I'm dying. I'm going to be nothing but trouble and expense and heartbreak." "You're not a stranger," Thomas said firmly. "Not anymore. You're our friend. And friends show up. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Anna moved in on a Tuesday in February. The girls had decorated her room with crayon drawings. They'd picked early daffodils from the garden, barely blooming, but hopeful. They'd arranged her stuffed animals on the bed. "So she won't be lonely." Thomas helped her inside, supporting her weight as she shuffled slowly from the car to the house. She was so thin now. So fragile. But her eyes were bright as she looked around their home. "It's perfect," she breathed. "It's so perfectly normal and chaotic and alive." "That's one word for it," Thomas said with a smile. "I usually go with disaster zone, but yours is nicer." The first few weeks were hard. Anna had good days and bad days. Days where she could sit at the kitchen table and color with the girls. And days where she couldn't get out of bed, where pain etched lines across her face and all Thomas could do was adjust her medication and hold her hand until it passed. His daughters took it in stride. With the resilience of children who'd already learned that love meant staying even when things were hard. They brought Anna breakfast in bed on her bad days. Read her stories. Sat quietly doing homework in her room so she wouldn't be alone. And slowly, impossibly, Anna got stronger. Not cured. The disease was still there, still progressing. But stronger. She started walking to the kitchen without help. Started laughing more. Started talking about the future in terms of weeks and months instead of days. "It's remarkable," Dr. Patel said during a home visit. "I've seen cases where will and purpose extended life. But this is extraordinary. Whatever you're doing here, it's working." What they were doing was living. Simple, ordinary, beautiful living. Anna helped the girls with homework at the kitchen table. She taught them to bake cookies that only sometimes burned. She sat in the garden while they played, her face turned toward the spring sun, soaking in warmth she'd thought she'd never feel again. And Thomas found himself falling. Not just into routine or responsibility, but into something deeper. Something that terrified him because he'd sworn after Jennifer died that he would never, ever let himself care that much again. The pain of loss was too great. The risk too high. But Anna wasn't Jennifer. She was herself. Quiet where Jennifer had been loud. Gentle where Jennifer had been fierce. She made terrible jokes that made the girls groan. She cried at animated movies. She had a habit of leaving her coffee cup in random places around the house. And when she smiled at him over breakfast, something in Thomas's chest ached in a way that felt dangerously close to hope. 6 months after Anna moved in, Thomas's mother came to visit. She took one look at Anna playing dolls with the triplets in the living room. One look at Thomas watching Anna with soft eyes. She pulled him into the kitchen. "You're in love with her." It wasn't a question. Thomas started to deny it. Then stopped. "Yes." "And does she know?" "No." "And she can't, Mom. She's still sick. She's doing better, but she's not cured. I can't put that on her. The pressure of knowing I have feelings while she's fighting just to survive. It wouldn't be fair." His mother studied him for a long moment. "Your father had a heart attack when you were 10. Do you remember?" Thomas nodded. He remembered the terror. The hospital. The uncertainty. "The doctors said he might not make it." His mother continued. "Said even if he survived, his quality of life would be diminished. They told me to prepare for the worst." She met his eyes. "And you know what I did?" "What?" "I told him I loved him every single day. Because I realized that if those were going to be his last days, I wanted them filled with love, not fear. I wanted him to know he was cherished. That he mattered. That he was worth fighting for." She paused. "And he did fight. 35 years later, he's still here. But even if he hadn't been, I wouldn't regret loving him loudly. Thomas felt tears burn his eyes. What if I lose her, Mom? Then you'll grieve. And it will hurt. His mother took his hand. But Thomas, you're already in love with her. Already invested. Already going to hurt if something happens. The only question is whether you want her to know she's loved before it's too late. That night, after the girls were asleep, Thomas sat with Anna in the garden. Summer had arrived. Fireflies danced in the warm darkness. Anna was wrapped in a blanket despite the heat, but she was smiling. Peaceful. Can I tell you something? Thomas said quietly. Always. He took a breath. Took the leap. I'm falling in love with you. Actually, I think I already fell. Somewhere between the hospital room and the kitchen table and watching you teach Sophie to braid hair. His voice cracked. And I know the timing is terrible. And I know you might not feel the same way. And I know you have every right to tell me this is too much. But my mom reminded me today that life is uncertain and short, and we don't get guarantees. So I just wanted you to know, you're not just someone we're helping. You're someone I love. Anna was quiet for so long Thomas thought he made a terrible mistake. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I've never been loved before. Not by parents. Not by foster families. Not by anyone. I didn't think I was the kind of person who got loved. She turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. And then 3 little girls burst into my hospital room and decided I was worth saving. And their father looked at me like I was a person instead of a patient. And for the first time in my life, I thought maybe I do matter. Maybe I'm worth something. She took his hand. I'm scared, Thomas. I'm scared I'm going to get worse again. Scared I'm going to hurt your daughters when I die. Scared I'm going to break your heart. Scared I'm going to ruin this beautiful thing you've given me. You're not going to ruin anything, Thomas said, squeezing her hand. And yes, if we lose you, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt terribly. But Anna, this time we've had, this life you've built with us, it's worth the risk. You're worth the risk. I love you too, Anna whispered. I love you so much it terrifies me. Thomas pulled her close. She collapsed against his chest. And they sat there in the garden, while fireflies danced and the world turned and 2 broken people held each other together. The next morning, the triplets found them asleep on the couch, Anna curled against Thomas's side, his arm around her shoulders. They shrieked with joy, jumping on the couch, demanding to know if this meant Anna was their mom now. Not yet, Thomas said, laughing as 3 girls piled onto them. But maybe someday. Someday soon? Sophie insisted. Let's start with right now, Anna said gently, wrapping her arms around all 3 girls. And see where it goes. Is that okay? 3 blonde heads nodded enthusiastically. Thomas looked at his daughters. At Anna. At this family forming from wreckage. Maybe it was okay to hope. To trust. To let someone in. 8 months after Anna moved in, against all odds, against every prognosis and prediction, she was still here. Still fighting. Still laughing at Emma's jokes and burning cookies with Mia and letting Sophie practice braiding her hair. Her doctor called it a medical anomaly. Thomas called it love. Anna called it being given a reason to stay. On a Saturday morning in October, Thomas took Anna back to Mercy General Hospital. Not as a patient, but as a visitor. Back to room 247, which was currently empty, waiting for its next occupant. Why are we here? Anna asked, confused. Thomas got down on one knee right there in the hospital room. Pulled out a ring he'd been carrying for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Because this is where my life changed. Where 3 troublemaking girls opened the wrong door and found someone extraordinary. Where I learned that love doesn't follow rules or timelines or logic. Where I met the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with, however long that life is. Anna's hand flew to her mouth. Anna Bennett, will you marry me? Will you let 3 little girls call you Mom? Will you let me love you for every day we have left, whether that's weeks or months or years or decades? Will you take this ridiculous, chaotic, beautiful life we've built and make it official? Yes, Anna sobbed. Yes, yes, yes. The wedding was small. Thomas's parents. A handful of friends. Anna's doctor, who'd become something like family. And 3 flower girls in matching lavender dresses who took their jobs very seriously, scattering petals with military precision, while Mr. Whiskers watched judgmentally from his carrier. Anna wore white. She was still thin, still fragile, but radiant. When she walked down the aisle, walked without help, strong enough now to make it on her own, Thomas felt tears stream down his face. You came back to me, he whispered when she reached him. You gave me a reason to, she whispered back. They said their vows in the same hospital chapel where Thomas had once prayed for his wife to survive. Where he'd said goodbye to Jennifer. Where he'd thought his story had ended. But it hadn't ended. It had just been waiting to begin again. I promise to love you on good days and bad days, Anna said, her voice strong. To show up even when it's hard. To choose you every single morning. To be the mother your daughters deserve and the partner you need. To live every day like the gift it is, because I know now that not everyone gets second chances. And you and Sophie and Mia and Emma, you're my second chance. Thomas couldn't speak through his tears. Could only hold her hands and nod and try to convey everything he felt in the squeeze of his fingers, the look in his eyes. The officiant pronounced them married. The triplets cheered before he could finish. And Thomas kissed his wife. His second chance. His unexpected miracle. The woman who'd been dying until 3 little girls decided she wasn't allowed to give up. 2 years later, Anna stood in the garden of their home, watching Thomas chase 3 9-year-old girls who were pretending to be dragons. Her hand rested on her chest, feeling the steady beat of her heart. Still damaged. Still fragile. But still beating. She'd defied every odd. Lived past every timeline. Her doctor called it unprecedented. Her husband called it stubborn. She called it being loved back to life. Mama Anna! Mia called. Come be a dragon with us. Mama Anna. She'd never thought she'd hear those words. Never thought she'd have a family, a home, a reason to wake up in the morning beyond just surviving another day. She joined the game, roaring dramatically while the girls shrieked with laughter. Thomas caught her eye across the garden, smiled that soft smile that still made her heart stutter. He mouthed, I love you. She mouthed back, I love you too. That evening, after the girls were tucked in bed with elaborate dragon-themed bedtime stories, Anna found Thomas in the kitchen loading the dishwasher. Do you ever think about that day? She asked, leaning against the counter. The wrong door? Thomas turned, studied her face. Every day. Do you think it was really wrong? The door? He crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. No, he said softly. I think 3 troublemaking girls knew exactly what they were doing. I think they saw someone who needed saving, and they refused to walk away. I think they led me exactly where I needed to go, even if I was too stubborn to realize it at the time. Anna rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I was so ready to die, she whispered. I'd made peace with it. And then your daughters burst in like tiny hurricanes and decided I wasn't allowed to give up. And suddenly I had a reason to fight. A reason to try. A reason to believe tomorrow might be worth seeing. I'm glad they're stubborn, Thomas murmured into her hair. Me too. There was something she'd never told him, Anna realized. About that day. Thomas? That morning, the morning your daughters found me, I'd made a decision. She pulled back to look at him. The doctors had told me I had maybe 2 weeks. The pain was getting worse. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every breath felt like drowning. And I thought, what's the point? Why drag it out? Thomas's grip tightened on her. I told the nurses that morning I was done. No more medication. No more fighting. I just wanted to sleep and not wake up. Tears spilled down Anna's cheeks. And then I heard this sound. Giggling. Little girls giggling in the hallway. And I remember thinking how cruel it was that the last sound I'd hear would be joy I'd never get to experience. Anna. The door opened. she continued. And there they were. 3 identical little girls with blonde hair and bright eyes. And they looked at me like I was a person, not a dying patient. Like I mattered. And Sophie grabbed my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Connection. Like maybe I wasn't completely alone in the universe. She looked up at him. You saved my life that day. Not just medically. You saved me from giving up. Your daughters burst through that door and decided I was worth staying for. And suddenly I had a reason to take my medication. A reason to eat. A reason to fight through one more day just to see them again. Thomas held her so tight she could barely breathe. I love you, he said fiercely. I love you so much. I know, Anna whispered. And that's the miracle. Not that my heart kept beating. The miracle is that I learned what it feels like to be loved. To be chosen. To belong somewhere. She cupped his face in her hands. Your daughters didn't just save me, Thomas. They taught you it was okay to love again. To risk your heart again. To believe that maybe happiness was still possible after loss. They taught me, Thomas said softly, that sometimes wrong doors lead exactly where you need to go. Anna smiled. And that sometimes the best things in life find you when you're not even looking. Outside their window, the world turned. Morning would come with its chaos. The girls would argue. Mr. Whiskers would knock something over. Life would be messy and perfectly imperfect. And Thomas and Anna would face it together. Upstairs, 3 girls slept peacefully. In the morning, they'd wake up to breakfast, fight over the blue bowl, argue about whose turn it was to feed the cat. Ordinary. Chaotic. Family. Sometimes the wrong door leads you exactly where you were meant to be. Sometimes 3 7-year-old girls know better than anyone else who deserves to be saved. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough to change everything.